It's the Trupany Show. With your host, James Trupany.
Hello and welcome to the Trupany Show. My name is James Trupany. This is my show, and today we are back with Beginner's Guide to Japanese Professional Wrestling, and we're looking at 1992 again, and we're looking at a legendary tournament that has had a lot of influence on the Japanese wrestling business over, well, really, 40-odd years. But the 1992 edition was something special, and to join me to discuss this is Mr. Simon Heath of Manchester. How are you, sir?
Hello, sir. I am very, very well. This is sort of my first proper foray into All Japan. I've sort of dipped in and out, just sort of cherry-picking matches here and there when people have gone, oh my God, you've got to watch this, and then given me a list of about 4 billion five-star matches from like a 3-year period. But this is my first sort of proper show watching.
Yeah, the Championship Carnival kind of started in 1973. I mean, the company had only been going 6 months, and Giant Baba announces this massive tournament with all the top stars of the company and some really big names. And it became kind of like the heart and soul of how All Japan laid out its year. It's where they made the new stars. It's where they cemented some older stars. A classic example was Abdullah the Butcher, who was one of the early winners. They kind of reignited his career in Japan through the Championship Carnival tournament, and it becomes such a big part of how All Japan developed their star system. Now, the actual tournament stopped between 1983 and the early 90s because All Japan was kind of in the doldrums. They were clearly the number 2 division in Japanese wrestling, and when Giant Baba decided to get his house in order, the Championship Carnival returned. Now, the Championship Carnival works on a round-robin system, just like the New Japan G1 Climax tournament does today. And they had different formats down the years. They had just blocks. They had blocks with finals and semi-finals. One year they did the second and third place had a playoff to get to the final. And it's really how they developed their new stars. It's really where they push things. Now, the 1992 edition was very important. As we've discussed before, Genichiro Tenryu had left the company, and Giant Baba was faced with this big hole in his main event. He had Jumbo Tsuruta and Stan Hansen from the previous generation who were really making waves in the main event, but he needed to develop this new talent. And with Tenryu gone and taking a lot of the All Japan roster with him, he had chance finally to push through some of the younger names in the tournament, and that was really how the tournament was pushed. The 4 pillars of All Japan, as they would become known, Akira Teiyu, Kenta Kobashi, Matsuhiro Misawa, and Toshiaki Kawada, were the real focuses of this tournament, and they certainly had some great matches in this tournament. What were your feelings before you started watching this tournament about All Japan in this era, Si? Like you said, you hadn't gone deep into this, but what was the reputation that the company had?
Well, I think it's a really good time to be doing a episode on the Championship Carnival, especially this one, because they used it in such a similar way to the way New Japan used the G1. Obviously, we've just come off a big G1 that we were covering. Because I think, if I remember this right, I think they sort of both stole the idea from Rikidozan.
Yeah, that's right.
Didn't they? Baba and
Antonio Inoki.
And Inoki. Yeah, sorry, the name escaped me there. That's terrible behaviour. Because Rikidozan had the World League in JWA, which was a kind of similar sort of a thing. So each one of those guys took that format and took it to their own company. And the way they sort of highlight new stars without necessarily having to have them win a lot of matches in the tournament is very similar, especially to this year's G1. And obviously this time period of All Japan, you've got those, it's sort of the beginnings, the early days of the 4 Pillars era. You can really see them pushing those guys in this tournament. So I think it's kind of fascinating. It's a really interesting period.
Yeah. Now, this, unfortunately for us, All Japan doesn't have an all-encompassing streaming system where they've got everything ever, because they don't own the rights to everything ever. But the guys at the All Japan Archive do store all of the matches they can find about All Japan throughout its history, from TV and from pirate tapes and one thing and another. So we were able to stitch together a selection of matches from the All Japan 1992 Championship Carnival. Now, bear in mind, we couldn't watch everything in the space of a week because it was a large tournament, but we picked out 10 matches which we thought would be interesting and kind of featured all the game day players in the tournament, the ones that were really being pushed forward. So we're going to start with our first match, which featured two Gaijins. That was Terry Gordy and Joel Deaton. Now, Joel Deaton isn't a name we hear very often in the kind of, how can I put it, the pantheon of All Japan achievement. But he was a guy who was making a living in All Japan. It was a bit smaller than his contemporaries, but it gave him a good underdog edge. And certainly in this match with Terry Gordy, he started off the right way. As Terry Gordy went in his traditional rope running introduction, Deaton laid in a lariat and started kicking on Bamm Bamm, which probably wasn't the smartest of moves in kayfabe, but it certainly gave him an instant start, and the fans rallied behind him straight away. What did you think of this match, Si?
Yeah, so Joel Deaton was a guy who I really only knew as one of the guys that J.J. Dillon dumped to go to the Four Horsemen.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew absolutely nothing about him apart from that. Best thing about him that I can see is that he came out to the theme to Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
Bullwhip. And I've just got written down here, possibly the world's first indie wrestler.
Hey.
You see?
Oh, I see what you did there. That was cool.
Yeah. I mean, this match, it was a bit plodding, I thought. I mean, it's essentially sort of 8 minutes of headlocks.
You get that a lot, yeah.
Well, yeah, and not on the face of it, no general problem with that. Maybe it's just because I didn't really give a damn about Joel Deaton. But, also, like, Terry Gordy has this reputation for being like super stiff and this sort of thing. But that power bomb,
yeah,
I don't know. It just looks like he sort of just pushes them into the mat rather than actually dropping them in any way. I mean, I'm sure. I know that you're sort of dropping them on the top of their head rather than on the top of the back like you do these days. So you've got to protect the guy, but I don't know. Especially in this match, it just looked a little bit wet, I thought. Like,
it is interesting, and I think as well it probably had to do with the relationship between the two wrestlers and how gentle Terry was with them. I get the feeling these two might know each other quite well, so therefore Terry wasn't going to kill him. Just
yeah, I mean, certainly from WCW, if nothing else.
Yeah, I can exactly see what you mean with this, because All Japan does have this killer reputation for being monstrous bumps and hard hitting and stiff because of the style of the wrestling. The style of the wrestling is very much much more like North American wrestling than New Japan was. But they heavied up all the moves. It was really heavy duty everything. That's how All Japan worked. It was going for realism through brutality, not realism through sports style. So if you put it on a WCW show, it would look crippling. But if you put it on an All Japan show,
well, just there's a period towards the end of the match where they're trading chest slaps.
Yeah,
that made me cringe something awful. Like,
yeah, it's
and it also made me think. It's not occurred to me before, but there's somebody on the Independents at the minute that reminds me a hell of a lot of Terry Gordy, and that's Walter.
Yeah, I get that a lot as well.
From WXW, and it had never clicked with me before until I was watching this match, and when he was doing those chest slaps, I was just like,
yeah,
I see now.
Yeah, it all makes sense. You do tend to get guys who have similar body shapes tend to kind of gravitate towards somebody's style of a very similar body shape as well.
Yeah, and there's a lot of guys with Walter's body shape in this tournament.
Yeah, there's a kind of this, we talk about like the generic Performance Center body of 2005, well, not Performance Center, Development System body of 2005. That's what Ben's accused Eli Drake and EC3 of having. But there is certainly
power plant as well.
Yeah, the power plant body. But there is certainly an All Japan body style, which is kind of a bit lumpy, really big, thick, heavy set neck, lats, and kind of not sculpted muscularity that we expect to see on wrestlers today. Certainly, they look like they could go in a fight because they're trying to protect their bodies as much as they possibly can.
That's it.
Yeah.
Also better for taking bumps, you would imagine.
Yeah, especially as the All Japan style, like we said, it's about heavy hitting, traditional style wrestling moves. Well, those traditional style wrestling moves were designed for not to be heavy hits, so you have to adapt your body to make that work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, then we move on then to Dr. Death, Steve Williams, and Dan Crawford. Now, so Dan Crawford was the partner of Doug Furnace, and you probably know him better from his WWE run as Phil LaFon. And he was a very talented tag team wrestler. He didn't really break out in North America the way perhaps his partner did. He's maybe not quite as charismatic, and was considered, how can I put this? Had a little bit of reputation in the All Japan locker room. I know that him and Dan Spivey didn't quite see eye to eye from time to time. So, yeah, it's interesting, this particular matchup. They're kind of junior heavyweights. At the time, they were all Asian tag team champions, and they were in this tournament as single heavyweight wrestlers. But the size difference is fairly obvious, and Williams does kind of like throw him around the ring quite a lot. What did you think of this match, Si?
Yeah, I was just really confused to start off with, because I heard the name Dan Crawford, and I was just like, I've never heard this name before. I wonder who that is. So I looked him up, and I got this Wikipedia page up for Dan Crawford, and it said something like born in 1929. I'm like, hang on a minute. Surely this isn't the same guy. Only then did I read further down and discover that in a homage to the original Dan Crawford, Phil LaFon had taken this name on and wrestled under it. So I was entirely confused to start off with. I thought, how is this person who was a booker for Stampede Wrestling in the 1960s, and who apparently invented the ladder match as well, the original Dan Crawford, which is an excellent piece of trivia. Yeah, so that confused me to start off with, but then when I discovered it was Phil LaFon, that it made sense as to why I didn't care. Yeah, this was pretty much a murder, wasn't it?
It was really, yeah.
I get the impression that Crawford was pretty much in this tournament just to make up the numbers, and obviously Dr. Death is a pretty established star by this point.
They just had the epic run with the tag team titles, and they'd won back-to-back tag team tournaments, Doc and Gordy. So
right.
The Miracle Violence connection, it kind of like there was three phases to the Miracle Violence connection in All Japan. There was Gordy being the number one Gaijin, which was around about 1990 when he won the Triple Crown. They start tagging together. They are the dominant tag team, and then Williams takes over as the top star. Gordy was there to kind of groom Williams, but they ended up with something much bigger as a unit than they did as individuals, and it launched Williams as to being the big star of All Japan in the Gaijins.
I get the impression that happens quite a lot in All Japan. That they slam a tag team together because they've got nothing for them in singles, and then suddenly the tag team becomes massive. Yeah,
I think Hansen and
Akira, sorry, go on.
I was going to say Hansen and Brody were probably a very similar kind of experience.
Yeah, no, I mean Akira Tao made a lot of his waves in tag teams, didn't he? In terms of match quality. So.
And Yun Akiyama as well is another one. The current lead booker, and well, he's no longer a main event ace, but he's certainly important to the All Japan drawing ability, and he is the creative force behind the company at the moment and its resurgence as well. But yeah, Steve Williams was a big star at this particular point, and he would himself launch off into Triple Crown territory within the next 18 months. This became kind of a launch pad for him too.
Yeah, so this one was pretty much just all out murder.
Yeah, really. You know, someone's got to lose at the end of the day, and that's really what they were there for. So,
yep.
So next we moved on to, speaking of murder, Terry Gordy and Johnny Ace. Now, Johnny Ace was on the up as a Gaijin babyface. He was Mrs. Baba's favourite wrestler. So, he was the nice blonde-haired Gaijin that she clung to. But in this particular case, it was still too early in his career for him to make an impact, and he got murdered by Terry Gordy.
Yeah, Johnny Ace is one of those ones that I will forever be totally confused as to how he became a big star in Japan. I mean, I think he's in better shape now than he was then. It's hard to tell with the sort of power suits and the gravelly voice, but he looks to be in much better shape now than he was then. But I will say this match, mullets.
Oh, it's a mulleting corker, isn't it?
You can't. I mean, this tournament may as well have been Championship Carnival Mullets and Mustache Edition, because the Gaijins were really bringing the haircuts in this particular tournament. There's been some absolute corkers. I find it strange that Dr. Death and Stan Hansen are probably the two biggest stars out of the Gaijins, because there's no attempt at mullet from either of them.
Oh no, you got to say Doc has got a kind of mullet effect going on with the fringe and the collar length.
I don't know. He does have the sort of haircut that his football coaches probably would have screamed at him to shave those sideburns, you hippie. Probably why he's got it now. But
to be fair, he had that beard when he was playing for Oklahoma.
Oh, well, all right, fair enough. I'm imagining the Johnny Unitas haircut that you can set your watch by.
Well, there is that, but the famous story behind Steve Williams was him and Rick Steiner were driving from a show one night, and they came across a car that had crashed and was on fire, and there were people trapped inside. Rick tried to get somebody out of the car and realized they were dead. They went round to the other side, and they saw somebody alive. They tried to pull them out. They couldn't get them out because the door was stuck, and Steve yanked the door from the frame.
Yes.
That's just, and he never really bragged about it. No one ever found out about that story until Rick told it at a later date. So it's
probably happened to him every week. Probably had a Sunday job down a local scrapyard when he was a kid. Just tearing cars apart with his bare hands.
Well, I mean, he got the Dr. Death nickname at Oklahoma for his work on special teams in the football team because he was absolutely, utterly fearless. And that intimidating Dr. Death stare he had that at Oklahoma. There's still pictures of there that will terrify you, and he's just stood still.
See, it'd be wasted these days. Now you're not allowed the wedge.
No. Well, joke there.
Bit of NFL talk there drifting in. I do apologise.
A joke there for you for 1930s college football fans. But
yeah.
Right.
There's meant to be some in your audience, surely.
I'm sure there is. I'm sure there is somewhere. Then we move on to a match we watched, which did involve two of the four pillars: Toshiyuki Kawada versus Akira Teiyu, in a stiff as houses match. They really hit one another quite hard. There was a lot of heavy noises going on in this match as these two slammed into each other. Teo, a nice, clean-cut, young former sumo, jumped Kawada before the bell and really laid into him. But this match was just a prime example of the two stars they had on their hands.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the crowd were absolutely unglued for this one the whole way through. They were going totally crazy. But there was one thing that very much upset me mid-match, though. That somebody threw a streamer halfway through the match into the ring. I mean, that is bad form. I know British wrestling were terrible at throwing streamers, but at least we know when to do it. For the most part,
we're terrible at throwing streamers and get the wrong colours because it's always just multicoloured streamers, and you're supposed to throw the colour of the wrestler you're trying to celebrate.
That is true. So we do. There is occasionally all black streamers for Jimmy Havoc though, because he's King of the Goths.
Yeah.
So we do have that. No, you were talking about Tao's amateur background, but something I discovered which I didn't know was that Kawada, in his high school national wrestling championships, the man he beat in the final was Kiichi Yamada.
Ah,
later became Yushin Thunder Liger.
Yeah.
So I thought that was quite interesting. But yeah, this match was absolutely crazy. We were talking on a previous episode, I think in the G1 coverage that we did about my insistence that people cinch submission holds.
Yeah.
In and make them look like they're properly killing people. Well, Teo's octopus hold. Oh my god. That's not even really a shoot hold, but it could be now. He just flipped him round and tore an arm off. So yeah, I absolutely love this match. I mean, you can see how big these guys are going to be. Even at this early stage.
Yeah, I mean
so good.
I mean, you look at as well. Kawada's like Boston Crab. He doesn't even turn them over. He just kind of hangs them there by the leg, so that all their weight's on the knee.
The ankles up and yeah.
It's like it's not even, it's just a Boston. He hasn't bothered with the crab part. So yeah, it was something else, and you can see as well. Kawada has a reputation for being very stiff, like even worked stiff. So it was kind of like and this is the environment he grew up in. This is what we're seeing as we've talked with All Japan Women. When you're in that level of competition with your colleagues, there's only so many spots, and you have to do something to stand out. And the way to stand out in All Japan is to hit people really hard. I actually, funnily enough, Rip Rogers was talking about Giant Baba on Twitter last night, and he said, he wouldn't stand for rubber dolls and, theatrical matches like we get in DDT these days. And I'm like, no, he wouldn't, but he was responsible for some things that I'm not particularly keen about in professional wrestling. Uh-huh. Just because of the level of impact and the level of competition there was going that. Now, New Japan at the minute, we do enjoy those great matches that we see, but you've got Okada, Omega, Naito, and a couple of others who are trying to outdo each other all the time, and that's what happens, and it's not safe, and sometimes you get injuries, and the longer you do that for, the more injuries you're likely to accrue.
Yeah, and I mean, we've seen that with New Japan recently, with Honma and Shibata. You can really get yourself into trouble. So yeah, I agree with you, and I'm sure there were plenty of people at that time talking about how these guys were ruining the business. So,
well, they were certainly making it very difficult for everybody else in the business. Yeah. Okay, then we move on to a young man you might have heard of, Kenta Kobashi. This was still in his early days as his first run in All Japan Pro Wrestling. He wasn't quite part of the Four Pillars yet. He'd come off his big losing streak, which really established him as a star. Yeah, I'll say that again. He'd come off his big losing streak that established him as a star, because you can do that.
Yeah, what was it? Was it 63 matches or something?
Yeah, without a win.
In?
Yeah, when he started in 88, didn't he? So, so it nearly took him 18 months to get a victory. But the fans absolutely adored this underdog. He was described round about this time, maybe a little bit after, as the perfect wrestler, because he could wrestle junior heavyweights and make them look stunning, and he could wrestle heavyweights and make them look stunning as well. He wasn't quite at his peak. It would take another 4 or 5 years for him to get to the absolute pinnacle of his ability, but certainly you could see all the groundwork was there for him to be a really big star, and his skill set's already there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's hard for me to talk about this match because my knowledge of Kobashi later on and me just having cherry-picked matches, he's in most of them. When people say to you, oh, All Japan's great, you've got to check out this match, 9 times out of 10 it will have Kenta Kobashi in it. And over the years, seeing various people use moves that he invented, I mean, there's hundreds of them. So this match, it's kind of hard for me to watch it because he's losing to Dan Spivey.
To be fair to Dan, though, he was an established Gaijin star at the time.
I know. I was amazed at how over he was, actually, because my sort of memories of him were him and Sid beating the living hell out of uncooperative jobbers on WCW television. Which it wouldn't have been too much, but I think that was 88, 89, something like that. So
yeah, it was. Yeah, it was only a couple of years after that. I mean, after his run in WCW, Dan goes back to All Japan Pro Wrestling and becomes Stan Hansen's tag partner. They had a run in '91 to the tag team tournament final against Doc and Gordy, and you can listen to me and Alex Edwards talk about that earlier in this series. And so he had kind of established himself as a big star, and Dan Spivey is one of those guys who's kind of underrated and kind of overrated. I mean, there's certain spots of his career where he was exceptional, and there's certain spots of his career where he just wasn't very good. This is one of the exceptional runs he had, though.
And he was proto Bray Wyatt as well.
He was, especially in WWE. Waylon Mercy, that was his character, wasn't he? Yes, indeed.
Also, cracking mullet at one point.
Absolutely fantastic mullet, and his facial expressions are absolutely awesome as well. Yeah.
I think I sort of forget, the skills that he did have, because I just think of him as this great big lumbering, ridiculous promo cutting idiot from WCW. So,
It was. Sorry, Karen.
I was just going to say, but but yeah, when you see him in this kind of environment, it blew my mind a little bit.
Yeah, he was good friends with the Dynamite Kid as well. Basically, because the Dynamite Kid got him in a grovet one night, and Dynamite just yanked across and ranked his arm away, and he didn't think that anyone the size of Dynamite could do that. And they became really good friends after basically Dynamite nearly beat him up. So, but he became like one of those mainstay players in All Japan. He was a guy on the scene who was making a good living from doing that. The 2-week on, 2-week off schedules suited him down to the ground, for especially the guys who by this point had some really dodgy knees and couldn't do the things at a constant pace that he used to do. He was able to extend his career with All Japan.
Pretty impressive litany of tag partners as well throughout his career, actually.
Yeah, and Sid.
And Sid, yeah.
But there you go. So we'll move on to Masahiro Misawa. Sorry, my fault. Missed one out. So we move on to Dan Spivey again, and he wrestled Stan the Lariat Hansen. Stan Hansen was the top Gaijin star in All Japan at that particular point. He'd had a couple of Triple Crown runs. In fact, it was him, Tenryu, and Tsuruta in a 3-way feud that really cemented the reputation of the Triple Crown as the championship to win in All Japan and the championship to win in Japanese wrestling generally. By the late 90s, All Japan was kind of the number one and most respected promotion. Though we talk a lot about New Japan because they were filling stadiums, it was actually All Japan who were making the money because they were the ones that going to Sumo Hall and jacking up the ticket price rather than going to Tokyo Dome and selling lots of tickets. It was a different way of promoting wrestling, but the actual zeitgeist and deep depth of culture meant that Stan Hansen was a huge name. Now, there was also the point that when they were promoting this show, they talked about youth a lot. And that's actually was Stan Hansen's catchphrase. When you see him stick his hay forks in the hair and shout out, he's actually saying youth. Because when he started in All Japan, he was running up against Tsuruta and Tenryu and Giant Baba specifically. And he was part of the youth movement when he first started in the early 80s in All Japan. Now, by this point, he definitely wasn't part of the youth movement. He kept his catchphrase, but Hansen was still a stunning presence in any professional wrestling ring, and he still could go. Even in his late 30s, he was producing incredibly high-quality matches that were famous for their stiffness and famous for their dramatic content. And certainly this match with Spivey, the two tag partners have a nice sporting affair, kind of, until Stan drops his guard uncharacteristically when he sees Dan can't stand up straight. He was about to lariat him. He stops, and then Dan kicks him in the stomach and gives him a DDT.
Yes. Yeah, it was quite a nice little moment for a second, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
Until Spivey ruined it. The Spivey Spike, as the Japanese commentary team loved to shout. No, I love Stan Hansen. I think he's just amazing. I think even if he got to a point of sort of age and immobility where all he had was his left hand and his lariat, he could still pull out great matches. That punch is just a thing of beauty. It really is.
It really is.
There aren't many better in pro wrestling, even if he is just hitting them as hard as he possibly can, a la Terry Funk. There was one fantastic moment in this where Spivey ran into the corner and he hopped up onto I think it was the second rope, and for one beautiful moment I honestly thought that he was going to attempt a moonsault. He's something about his body language just said moonsault, and I thought, oh my god, is he seriously going to do this? And then he just kind of did this weird half turn falling elbow drop, like didn't even jump, just kind of fell off the top rope and turned 90 degrees and dropped an elbow. It's like, oh, that seems more sensible.
The kind of thing Aja Kong does, but with slightly less gracefully.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to say, like, Hansen's reputation at this point was just absolutely paramount. You know, he'd been around in All Japan. He was technically a heel, but after Bruiser Brody's death, the fans could not stop but love him, could do nothing but love him. He was such a fixture in the All Japan cards, and you have to think, like, even 5 or 6 years later, he's still a valuable player to have around in the run-up to his retirement, and he still always did well in the Tag League tournaments. He did well in the Championship Carnival for a long time after this. This is probably his best work in this particular period, and certainly, he was a guy I was always reading about in Power Slam magazine. Finn Martin spoke a lot about how Ray gave him rave reviews as such a special person within the All Japan culture.
And that theme music as well. It's an absolute banger.
You do put a lot of stock into a good theme song.
Hey, you ask Bobby Roode. That can make or break you in this world.
Big good conversation on the squash this week about whether Bobby Roode's song is more over than he is.
Well, the brilliant piece of trivia I discovered last week, which I didn't know up until then, was that apparently they offered that to Nakamura, that exact song, when he started, but he turned it down because he didn't think that it fit his character, which he was absolutely 100% right about. But I just thought that was quite fascinating that they had the song before they had the person for it. Like, it wasn't built for a specific person. It was just it was recorded.
I know we're kind of breaking away from the point, but I know that certain people get free choice. Like, I know Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens had to spend hours in the NXT library looking for the right song for themselves, and other people have a vision for what that person's going to be, so they give them the music. And if you can be Aleister Black and just phone up a band that you like. Right, it's a song, mate.
Yeah.
But yes, so that was Stan Hansen and Dan Spivey, which was a touching little tag team partners having a good old set 2 kind of match. Yes. So one other match we watched in the tournament was Mitsuhiro Misawa, who we haven't really talked too much about in this tournament so far, and he wrestled Doug Furnas. Now, Doug Furnas, like we said, was in that tag team with Phil LaFon in WWE, and he and Phil LaFon, or Dan Crawford, as he was known in Japan, were the All-Asian Tag Team Champions. He was always a solid worker. He was always charismatic. He always had something about him, maybe more than Dan Crawford did, who was much more of a mechanic. He was there to get people over rather than to get himself over. And he's a very good wrestler. He had a run in WCW as a singles wrestler around the same time, early 1990. Had an incredible body and an incredible look. Was a long-time powerlifting champion and weightlifting champion. And Misawa was the star on the rise. The former Target Mask had really developed himself and developed his character. It was something really worth watching him develop at this point. And in matches like this, he really got the opportunity to shine. Si, what's your thoughts on this match?
So, I love Doug Furnas. I'm a big powerlifting fan, and a big strongman fan as well. And Doug Furnas is an absolute legend in the powerlifting world. I mean, we're talking about a man who he was one of only 3 people in this time to have totaled 2,400 pounds total in the 3 powerlifting disciplines, and one of those other people in that 3 was Bill Kazmaier, who was a terrible professional wrestler, despite being a very good powerlifter. So it always amazes me at how great Doug Furnas was at this. He was also the first person to ever pull 2,400 pounds twice, and he did that at 270 pounds weight as well, which is absolutely crazy. And if you know anything about powerlifting, that's insane. Just to put this in perspective for people, Mark Henry has never totaled 2,400 pounds.
Yeah.
Doug Furnas in powerlifting, like obviously Mark Henry, accomplished Olympic weightlifter as well, but Doug Furnas is a better powerlifter than Mark Henry.
And he's about 90 pounds lighter.
Easily. Yeah, easily. He had 29 world records in powerlifting when he quit at a very early age because he suddenly decided he wanted to be a professional wrestler. And that is completely insane to me, especially considering how good he was at it. To be that strong at that size and then be pulling off Hurricane Ranas in the middle of a match against Misawa, it's just completely bonkers to me. I mean, I know this tournament is about Misawa, but for me, just this little section of it was about Doug Furnas because I think he's great.
That's fair enough. I can't disagree with you. I think, he was the right guy to have with LaFon, these 2 athletic young people who were really important to the growth of the company and the Asian tag team titles. But yeah, he was something very, very special. And then we moved on to the final, and we haven't talked much about him so far, but the main cause for all of this youth excitement that Giant Baba was going about was Mitsuharu Misawa. Now, Misawa was originally the Tiger Mask too. He'd started as a junior heavyweight back in the mid-80s, and he'd shed the Tiger Mask gimmick and become himself, Mitsuharu Misawa. Moved up to the heavyweight division, put on a lot of weight, about 20 or 30 pounds, and he was starting to really build some momentum as a main eventer. He had the look, he had the style, he has a very kind of stoic expression, but he had charisma to burn, and the Japanese fans were lapping up everything he did at this particular point. And he goes into the match with Stan Hansen in the final. Now, the obvious thing to do is to put Misawa over strong. This is your youth movement. You've talked about nothing else. But what Baba does instead is give Misawa every opportunity to get himself over, but still has Hansen to win the tournament, which could be seen as a mistake, but it meant that Misawa had something to go for again, and it meant Misawa's story and journey was not over, and the fans followed him through to make him the biggest star in Japan in the next 5 years. And this is really the moment where it all clicks for Misawa. Even though he loses the tournament, he becomes the number one draw of All Japan Pro Wrestling, certainly amongst the home crowd. Stan Hansen is confirmed as a guy who's going to be the main event terror for the next 3 or 4 years, and it really sets the company up for this massive growth period they have. What do you think, Si?
I mean, this was great. From Stan Hansen coming out, just belting fans left, right, and centre with a rope, and then, having them scatter wildly. We were talking earlier on about the Japanese guardrails way back when, and how ridiculous I think they are, and they've not altered much since 1992 by the looks of it.
No,
but, I mean, you were saying earlier on about at first glance the booking of this match doesn't make much sense, and you would have expected Misawa to win. But considering what happens later this year in All Japan, it makes perfect sense. This match with Misawa getting absolutely wailed on, and then coming back and just never, ever giving up, just always fighting from underneath and having those little bursts of comebacks, but then finally succumbing. There's such a great moment at the end of this match where Hansen swings his off arm and it gets blocked by Misawa, and the crowd goes absolutely crazy because they think this is it. He's blocked the lariat, but then Hansen just swings back around with his other arm and lays him out and pins him for the 3. Brilliant storytelling. Stan Hansen whipping out drop kicks, which was bonkers. And then it leads to later on in the year Misawa finally defeating Hansen to win what would be the first of his 5 Triple Crowns, after challenging for that title but not getting coming up short 2 or 3 times before this. Great stuff. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it is such it's such an influence on what Gato and Jado do with New Japan's booking these days. It is so layered. It is so deep. The stories within the matches are so well put together that's how the All Japan system worked. The King's Road booking style isn't just about how 2 wrestlers interact in the ring. It's about their entire journey. It's about how they are booked from the very beginning. And that's what Gato and Jado are doing in New Japan these days. Gato was an All Japan wrestler. An All Japan style wrestler. He started out in FMW. He was trained by Tarzan Goto and by Sushi Anita. Those were guys who trained underneath Baba. They would have been the next tier of guys below the 4 pillars if they'd stayed where they were. And because that All Japan King's Road style was ingrained into them, they still use that storytelling style today, and it works so well even though it's in a strong style environment.
And there's so many times these days where people will complain about a piece of booking and everybody will say, look, just wait, the story's not over, just wait to see how it plays out. So it's great to go back and see this sort of stuff because you know how it plays out, and you can see all those pieces fit together.
Yeah, exactly. If you want to learn how to book a wrestling show, watch this tournament. You know, not just like a wrestling show, a whole year's worth of wrestling. Baba was thinking so far ahead at this point as about what he was going to do and what chess pieces he was going to put where. You know, the other thing I noticed about this tournament generally is the number of near falls you see in matches. You know, it's the kind of thing that would drive Jim Cornette and Rip Rogers nuts. But yet Giant Baba is one of both of their favorite bookers and favorite people to work with from their own careers. But he booked false finishes all the time. You know, there was no end of 2 counts and really, really close counts and really, really long runs of a wrestler getting very, very close 2 counts. And it wasn't just happening in the main events. It was happening all the way through the card as well. But they got away with it because of the way they booked it. And it still became dramatic. It didn't lose its edge all the way through the match.
Yeah, because of the way Masaru was booked throughout this tournament, you buy into every single one of those near falls because you would expect him to win. Yeah. And that's why it's so perfect at the end that he doesn't.
Yeah, and it leaves the option open. You do not have to win to get over. You know, we see this a lot of is not being pushed properly. That's my favorite phrase whenever I see somebody. It's like, and I had a big go at this. When I first started this podcast, me and Ben talked about it a lot. The idea of he's not being used properly. Well, what is used properly? Misawa is being used properly, but he loses. Hansen is being used properly. He wins, but it's the end of his main event career, not the start of his main event career. It's all how you tell these stories and develop these stories and where you're launching people from or where you're getting people to go from. So, yeah, you know, you have to think about these things. And for some people, not being used means he's not world champion or she's not world champion. And that's not the way it works. This is the way it works. You do not have to win to be made a bigger star than you already are.
I mean, that's not even necessarily a booking issue, because we've seen so much, you know, in this year's G1, in this tournament as well, how strong you can look in losing.
Yeah.
But a lot of that is down to how the match is agented, or if it's being put together by the guys in the ring, how they're working the match.
Yeah,
because you know, if you've got a guy in the ring who's not willing to work with you, and they're being put over, chances are you're not going to look strong in defeat.
No.
So you need to have 2 guys. Now, I mean, you know, Hansen might have had a bit of a reputation, but he made Misawa look great in this match.
He knew what was good for the good of All Japan Pro Wrestling and what was going to make him the most money in the long term.
Absolutely, and that's a lesson that some wrestlers throughout history could have learned to their benefit, I think.
Yeah, and also it means that when we talk about Stan Hansen, it's in hushed reverence rather than, oi, look at him.
Yeah, look at that big old fat bloke at the top of the card.
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody has ever said that about Stan Hansen.
No, they haven't. And a prime example of what we're talking about, me and you were at King of Trios final last week in Wolverhampton, where we saw a team that was half the size of their opponents handle their opponents incredibly well and were literally the stronger team throughout the match, and the other team sneaked it. Now, the other team happened to be British Strong Style, and the team we're talking about is Sendai Girls. But intergender wrestling, like any form of wrestling, is the same. It all depends on how the 2 sets of opponents treat each other and who's willing to do what for who.
Yeah, and who came out of that match more over with the crowd.
Yeah.
It wasn't the team that won.
Yeah,
so
there you go. You see? Right then. Thank you very much for your time today, Simon. I hope you've enjoyed our chat.
Yeah, that's been great. I really, really enjoyed this tournament.
Good. I'm glad I asked you to watch it. You can find him at Butlins Club on Twitter. Are you still not wanting to talk to people much?
I mean, I just don't. So, you know, you can follow me if you like, but you're not actually going to see anything. So.
Okay. He just kind of sits there looking at his Twitter feed in silence.
My Twitter is for me, not for other people.
Okay, you can find me at Sheriff Lone Star. You can find WrestleTalk TV at WrestleTalk_TV on Twitter, and you can find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts from, as you can with the WrestleTalk TV, The Squash. Please listen to that every Tuesday or Wednesday, depending on when it drops, with Ben and Gavin. They do some fine and funny stuff. We will see you next week. We'll be back with a beginner's guide. Take care, and we'll see you then. Bye!